The operations room buzzed with pre-mission adrenaline. Maps pinned to walls fluttered from the gusts of box fans. Coffee steamed in metal mugs. The room smelled of sweat, gun oil, and anticipation. One by one, soldiers filled in rangers, grunts, and intel officers, each carrying the hardened aura of men who had stared death in the face and learned to joke with it. Then the door opened. She walked in Lieutenant Dana Prescott, combat medic, Army-trained and brand new to this unit. Her uniform was regulation perfect, her posture sharp. Yet the moment she stepped into the room, it was as if the air changed. The laughter dropped an octave. Shoulders stiffened. Not out of respect, out of discomfort. "Great," someone muttered. Under his breath, "We got Nurse Barbie on this op." Another chuckled behind his fist. Dana heard it all, but she said nothing. She scanned the room, found an empty chair in the back, and sat down. She took out a notepad. The mission briefing was about to begin, and Dana Prescott, despite their jokes, intended to listen, learn, and contribute. On the far end of the table sat Colonel Harwood, a seasoned officer with a reputation for calm intensity. His eyes flicked briefly to Dana, but gave away nothing. He tapped the table once. The projector clicked on. "All right, gentlemen," he began, his voice gravelly and steady. "Operation Hammerstrike is a go." A satellite image popped up on the screen, an isolated compound near the border of Afghanistan and Pakistan, surrounded by steep hills and limited escape routes. The objective: rescue 3 American engineers kidnapped by insurgents 2 weeks earlier. Intelligence suggested they were still alive, but time was running out. Captain Riker, leading the insertion team, stood and began explaining the infiltration path. Dana jotted notes. She noticed something immediately. He pointed to a drop zone less than 200 meters from the compound. But the terrain between was broken rocky ravines, unstable footing. Any injury sustained, it would be hard to evacuate quickly. Dana raised her hand. Riker looked surprised. "Yes, Lieutenant. Prescott, was it?" "Yes, sir." "Just wondering, has a medical contingency plan been discussed for injury extraction along that route? The terrain here," she gestured to the map, "could complicate stretcher movement." Silence. Then someone sorted. Another voice, this time from Sergeant Lynch. A burly veteran with a permanent 5 o'clock shadow called out, "Don't worry, Doc. We'll carry each other like always. We're not gonna need scented bandages and warm hugs." Laughter burst out. Dana's face didn't change. Colonel Harwood's fingers tapped the edge of the table. Once, twice. Then he spoke. "Sergeant Lynch, you break your leg in that ravine, and we'll see how many warm hugs you're asking for." The room hushed. "Lieutenant Prescott's question is valid," Harwood continued, tone sharp now. "Contingency planning is every soldier's concern. This operation doesn't succeed unless every one of you gets out alive." Dana looked up, surprised. That was the first time someone in this room had defended her. Captain Riker cleared his throat. "We'll have a med tent set up 2 clicks east. Any serious casualties will be pulled back there." Dana raised her eyebrows slightly. "Sir, with all due respect, that's a 15-minute delay under fire. Unacceptable for hemorrhaging chest wounds, especially in a firefight. I can deploy with a team and provide trauma care on site." Now she was pushing it. She knew it, and so did they. More shifting in chairs. A few side glances. Captain Riker leaned forward, visibly uncomfortable. "With all due respect, Lieutenant," he said, emphasis tripping off the words, "we need mobility, speed, and silence." Dragging along a base medic. "She's not a base medic," Colonel Harwood interrupted again. Now every head turned. "She's a combat medic trained in battlefield triage, emergency surgery, and chemical response," he continued, flipping through a folder beside him. "She also graduated top of her class in the CMC program and logged over 500 trauma simulations. Only one on this base who's certified to handle chemical exposure in the field. Dana blinked. She hadn't expected that much detail to come from him. The room went very still. Harwood closed the folder. But as of now, she's still observing. Continue the briefing. Captain Riker cleared his throat again, clearly rattled. The projector flicked to another slide timelines, extraction points, air support patterns. Dana listened, absorbing every second. In her mind, she was already planning. Imagining what would go wrong, who would fall first, where she'd need to set up an emergency triage zone, where she'd stash adrenaline and gauze in her vest for fastest reach. She wasn't here to play catch-up. The briefing ended 30 minutes later. As the soldiers filed out, a few glanced her way, not with amusement this time, but curiosity. One or two even nodded subtly. She returned none of it. She was used to this. She had walked into male-dominated rooms since day one of med school. She'd learned that silence could be stronger than a shout. The colonel lingered. As Dana stood, gathering her notepad, Harwood stepped closer. "You were right about that ravine," he said. "Thank you, sir," Dana replied cautiously. "Most people don't speak up when they're the only ones in the room," he added. Dana looked at him. "Sir, I didn't come here to be quiet." The colonel nodded, half a smile at the corner of his mouth. "Good," he said. "Let's see how loud you can be under fire." And with that, he turned and walked out. Dana stood alone for a second longer. They had laughed at her in the briefing room, mocked her boots, her presence. But somewhere, in the back of the room, the colonel had been listening. And something told her this wasn't the last time her voice would matter. 2 years before Kandahar, Dana Prescott stood ankle-deep in freezing mud at Fort Sam Houston, soaked to the bone, her arms shaking from fatigue. Around her, a dozen other medic trainees, all male, groaned as they dragged their weighted stretchers through the rain-slick field. The exercise wasn't optional. Failure here didn't just mean embarrassment. It meant you were dropped from the elite combat medical corps training track. "Prescott," barked Sergeant Monroe, watching her from under his poncho. "That Ranger weighs 190 pounds. Your patient's bleeding out. You gonna cry or carry?" Dana didn't answer. She hoisted the stretcher higher, teeth clenched, legs screaming. She'd been lifting for nearly an hour straight. No one helped her. The men paired up. She was alone. The bleeding demi-soldier bounced on the litter with every step. But Dana didn't drop him. She had something none of them could match. Quiet, brutal discipline that had been building since she was a girl. Her father, a former Marine Corps sniper, had raised her with tough love. If you want respect, Dana, you earn it with your hands, not your mouth. He taught her to shoot, to survive in the woods, to think 4 steps ahead. But he never believed she'd actually join the army. "You're too smart for this crap," he'd say. "Go be a doctor." A real one. Dana did both. She crushed. Pre-med at Johns Hopkins, then volunteered for the Army's medical officer track. Where others saw rank, she saw opportunity. Where they looked for safety, she ran toward difficulty. While classmates chose radiology and dermatology, Dana chose trauma and field surgery. She wanted to feel the heartbeat fading beneath her palms and know she could bring it back. Back at Fort Sam, she reached the finish line with a grunt and collapsed next to the dummy. Sergeant Monroe stared down, unmoved. "Again," he said. Dana didn't flinch. She stood, lifted, and started running again. By the time she graduated, she held the top field medical rating in her class and had earned the nickname Silent Scalpel. She didn't drink with the boys, didn't flirt with the officers. She trained longer, studied harder, and slept less. On one occasion, she revived a fellow trainee after a live trauma simulation went wrong. He'd gone into anaphylactic shock from a latex allergy. Dana jabbed him with epinephrine, cleared his airway with a makeshift tube, and kept him alive until help arrived. When instructors asked her afterward how she'd stayed calm, she simply said, "There wasn't time to panic." That moment earned her a quiet reputation, one that spread quietly through the ranks of Army medics. She didn't just know theory, she could perform under chaos. But none of that mattered in Kandahar. In Kandahar, to the men around her, she was still the girl in the uniform, an unknown, a soft spot in a hardened team. The morning after the briefing, Dana sat outside the field hospital, sharpening her trauma shears and checking her gear for the 10th time. She'd already packed her kit: twice compressed bandages, tourniquets, 4-packs, morphine, surgical gloves, chest tubes, decompression needles, field gauze, and 2 units of O-negative blood. She was ready. But she wasn't on the manifest. She knew that. She'd been told she was staying back, on standby, to assist with any wounded brought in post-extraction. And everything changed. A shout came from the communications tent. A drone feed had picked up new intel, something no one expected. Gas canisters, possibly chemical grade. Suddenly, the rescue op wasn't just bullets and hostiles. It was a chemical exposure zone, poison gas, possible nerve agents. The tent filled fast. Dana slipped in, unseen at first. Captain Riker stared at the screen. "If this is legit," he said, "we can't go in without CBRN prep. And we don't have time." A junior officer murmured, "We don't have anyone trained in chemical response on this team." "I am," Dana said, voice calm but firm. Heads turned. "I completed the CBRN trauma course at Fort Detrick," she continued. "I know nerve agents, symptoms, decontamination, emergency treatment. I've drilled dozens of times. You'll need atropine, calidoxime, field ventilation. I've got it all pre-packed." Captain Riker looked unconvinced. "We can't risk you in the field." "You'll risk everyone if you walk into a hot zone unprepared," Dana shot back. "I'm not asking to go. I'm telling you, you need me there." Silence. Then came the voice from behind. "Get her on the Blackhawk," Colonel Harwood said flatly. Captain Riker turned. "Sir, that's an order." Dana blinked. It was happening. The room moved in slow motion after that. Gear was thrown: her way vest, helmet, gas mask. She checked each seal, every strap. Her trauma pack was slung over her shoulder. She slid a sidearm into its holster. Someone handed her an M4, just in case. She didn't argue. Outside, the rotors of the Blackhawk were already spinning. She climbed aboard without a word, heart pounding in rhythm with the blades above. The same sergeant who mocked her before helped strap her in. This time, he didn't speak. Across from her, a ranger named Dempsey gave her a long look. "That stuff about nerve gas real?" She nodded. "Very. And you know what to do?" "I know enough to keep you breathing." Dempsey nodded slowly. "Then I'm glad you're here." The Blackhawk lifted, rising into a pale pink dawn sky. The desert below stretched out like a cracked battlefield waiting for names. Dana adjusted her gloves. She wasn't nervous, not exactly. She was ready. All that training, every insult, every drop of sweat had led here. This was no longer about proving herself. It was about keeping them alive. The Blackhawk cut through the desert sky like a blade. Morning light crept over the mountains, casting long shadows on the sand. Inside the aircraft, 10 soldiers sat tense and silent, weapons clutched, minds focused on the mission. Dana sat among them, wedged between crates of ammo and a communication tech. Her helmet sat snug, her vest loaded with gear. Her heart pounded, but not from fear. Anticipation coursed through her veins like fire. The pilot's voice cracked through the headset. ETA to drop point. 15 minutes. Dana took a breath, then began double-checking her chronopack. Saline bags, blood packs, chemical antidotes, airway tubes, splints all accounted for. Her hands worked quickly, almost automatically. Years of training turned panic into process. She could feel the glances now, not mocking like before, but uncertain, watchful. They had seen her speak up. They'd seen the colonel order her aboard. But none of that mattered until bullets flew and chaos hit. She knew they were wondering, could she handle it? Would she freeze? Would she drag them down? Dempsey sat across from her, staring. He leaned in slightly. "We make it out of this," he said through the comms. "I owe you a drink." Dana looked up. "I'll take coffee. Strong." He grinned. "Deal." A sudden burst of static came through. "Command to Hammer Strike be advised. Drone recon confirms presence of chemical storage drums. Insurgents may have deployed booby traps near hostages. Gas risk is now considered high. Proceed with CBRN protocol." A long silence followed. Captain Riker turned toward Dana. "Prescott, you still sure you're up for this?" Dana's voice was steady. "Yes, sir. I was trained for exactly this." He gave her a long look. "All right. When we breach, you stay behind cover until I give the clear. Then you move on the hostages. Understood?" She nodded. "Understood." The chopper began to descend. The terrain outside turned jagged, sharp rocks, broken ridges, narrow goat paths carved into the hillsides. The compound appeared like a ruin out of time-low walls, steel roofing, and makeshift towers. Suddenly, boom! The helicopter jerked violently. Alarms screamed in their ears. Dana was thrown sideways, slamming into a seat rail. Smoke erupted near the tail rotor. "RPG!" the pilot shouted. "We're hit!" Outside, bullets started, raining upward, tracers flashing. The team braced as the Blackhawk descended fast, wobbling under strain. "We're going down hard," the co-pilot warned. Dana clenched her teeth. Her fingers gripped the side rail. The ground rushed up. Wham! The helicopter crashed into the dirt, skidding sideways. A cloud of sand exploded around them. Metal screeched. The rotor shredded against stone. Silence. For a second, no one moved. Then, "Go! Go! Move!" Captain Riker roared. Doors were kicked open. Rangers spilled out, forming perimeter lines as gunfire echoed from the compound up the hill. Dana was last out. Her boots hit the sand hard. She ducked behind a rock, hands already moving to check her gear. Dempsey limped toward her, blood soaking his left leg. "I'm hit." Dana dropped beside him, unzipping her med kit. A bullet had sliced through the thigh, but missed the artery. "Hold still," she said, pressing gauze deep into the wound. "I knew this would happen," he groaned. "Shut up and breathe," she muttered. More gunfire cracked overhead. Shouts in Pashto echoed down the ridge. The team pushed forward. Riker waved toward the compound. "On me." Dana helped Dempsey to cover, handed him a morphine stick, then slung her pack and ran to catch up. The entry team reached the compound gate. A shaped charge blew it open, boom, and smoke filled the air. Inside, chaos. Men cleared room by room. Dana kept close, watching every corner. Then someone shouted, "Hostages found!" "Room at the end." Riker turned to Dana. "It's your time." She nodded, pulled on her gas mask, and sprinted toward the room. The metal door was half open. Inside, thick green vapor floated near the ceiling, an acrid smell, pushing through even her filters. She ducked low and entered. 3 hostages, all unconscious. One lay twisted awkwardly on the floor. Another had vomited. The third was barely breathing. Dana knelt. She checked pulses, faint, rapid, nerve agent symptoms. She moved fast, pulling out atropine injectors. One jabbed into a neck, another into a thigh. She turned the bodies, checking airways. She unzipped her trauma pack and pulled out a portable ventilator, strapping it over the youngest hostage's mouth. He gagged, then coughed violently. Good sign? A timer buzzed on her wrist. Her exposure time was running low. Time to move, she said aloud to herself. She grabbed the smallest hostage, first half carrying, half dragging him through the doorway. A ranger outside grabbed him and hauled him further. She went back in. The second hostage was heavier. Her legs strained. Her lungs burned. Her fingers trembled. She forced her body to work. Another ranger helped pull him free. Inside again last. One. The final hostage had no pulse. Dana dropped beside him, ripped open his shirt, began chest compressions. 1, 2, 3, 4. Still nothing. She jabbed him again, another atropine shot. Kept pressing. The seconds blurred. Then a twitch, a shallow breath. Dana exhaled hard, grabbed his arms, pulled. Just as she cleared the doorway, the floor inside gave a soft crack. Then fire. An explosion ripped through the room she'd just exited, hurling her and the hostage several feet. She hit the ground hard, shielded the man with her body, then rolled over, coughing. "Prescott," someone yelled. She looked up through the smoke. Captain Riker was sprinting toward her. "We need to extract now," he barked. "Blackhawk's not coming back. Second bird en route, where we've got 10 minutes to hold." Dana stood, panting, hands shaking, blood on her sleeves. "I'm good," she said, picking up her bag again. Riker looked her over, then nodded. "Then let's hold this line." Gunfire echoed through the valley, like thunder rolling off jagged cliffs. The compound was barely standing, half of it collapsed from the earlier blast. Shards of concrete rained down. Dana ducked behind a charred wall, blood crusting on her. Gloves, breathing fast through her mask. Her ears rang. Her shoulder ached from the fall. Across the courtyard, rangers were setting up a perimeter, dragging sandbags, reinforcing what little cover remained. 2 of the hostages lay on stretchers. Behind a burnt-out Humvee, Dana had already started IVs in both arms, pumped them with atropine, and was monitoring their vitals. The third was still unconscious, but breathing. Captain Riker slid into cover beside her. His helmet was scratched, his cheek bleeding. He handed her a half-empty canteen. "You still alive, Doc?" he asked, panting. Dana took a sip and nodded. "Barely. That room was a gas trap. Someone rigged it to blow when I crossed the threshold." "You pulled all 3 out," he said. "I saw it. Thought we lost you." "You almost did," she replied, then immediately turned toward a scream. A ranger stumbled into the courtyard, blood pouring from his neck and chest. "Sniper east wall." Someone shouted. Dana didn't hesitate. She ran low and fast across the rubble, slid beside the wounded man, and pulled him behind cover. Blood sprayed with every heartbeat. It was a deep arterial hit, the kind that gave her 90 seconds, maybe less. She ripped open her pack, yanked out gauze, jammed it into the wound. The ranger kicked and gasped, but Dana straddled him and applied pressure with all her strength. "Hold still. I've got you." His lips turned blue. Her hands were covered. In his blood now, her fingers slippery, sticky. She reached for the hemostatic clamp and jammed it into the artery. The bleeding slowed. She wrapped the neck, secured the pressure bandage, and turned him over to check his airway. Still breathing. She looked up and yelled, "I need a stretcher now." 2 soldiers rushed to help. Behind her, the Blackhawk's pilot radioed in. We're grounded. Tails busted. Second bird inbound. Ada, 15 minutes. Hold your position. 15 minutes in a kill zone. A lifetime. Donna scanned the courtyard. One of the hostages was seizing. She rushed over, injecting more atropine and securing his airway with a field tube. He calmed. Her fingers worked faster than her thoughts. Now pure instinct. Patch, stabilize, secure, repeat. Then, boom. The east wall blew apart. Dust and fire erupted. An RPG had struck the perimeter. 2 Rangers were down. One was screaming. The other didn't move. Captain Riker called over comms. They're breaching. Get ready for close contact. Donna looked up to see insurgents. Swarming down the hillside. Weapons raised, shouting in Pashto. Gunfire erupted from every side. She dropped her pack, grabbed the M4 slung across her back, and started firing from cover. Controlled bursts. Aim. Breathe. Fire. One fell. Then, another. Her hands shook, but she stayed on target. She moved to the next patient, rechecked his vitals, then laid down more cover fire. A ranger beside her nodded. Hell of a medic. Another yelled. She's got better aim than Brooks. A small smile crept onto Dana's face. Just 4. A second. Then a bullet ricocheted off the wall near her head, and she hit the ground hard. Behind her, a young private screamed in pain, his leg shredded by shrapnel. She crawled over, ignoring the bullets, and examined the wound. Tibial artery torn. She wrapped it tight with a cat tourniquet, and grabbed 2 plastic rods from her pack, broke them over her knee, and created a quick field splint. Private, she said, tapping his helmet. You're going home. Stay with me. He blinked. You're not what I expected. She smirked. Good. The captain's voice shouted from the far side. They're flanking left. Dana, we need suppressive fire near the east alley. Copy, she shouted. She grabbed the nearest rifle, leaned over the sandbags, and unleashed a volley of rounds. The insurgents ducked. Ranger Simmons launched a grenade over the wall. Boom! The ground shook. More bodies dropped. Another few minutes passed in brutal, dirty combat. Then, over the radio, 2nd Blackhawk inbound. 1 minute out. The noise grew, rotor blades slicing through the air like a thunderous promise. Dana stood, waving toward the clearing. Evac point. Move the wounded. 1 by 1, Rangers began dragging injured comrades and hostages toward the LZ. Dana carried 4 bags in each hand, holding them above her head as she ran beside the stretchers. One soldier tripped. Dana helped him up, blood smearing both of them. The Blackhawk descended. In a roar of wind and sand, sniper rounds cracked through the air. Dana ducked, dragging the private with the leg wound toward the skids. She loaded 2 hostages. Then the wounded ranger. Then another soldier with a shattered arm. Bullets zipped past. The pilot screamed. We have 30 seconds, get in ore. Get left. Captain Riker ran toward them. Go, Doc. Get inside. Donna looked around. Where's Simmons? In the alley. I'll get him. She turned, sprinting back into the smoke. Simmons was half conscious, blood on his face. She slung his arm over her shoulder. Come on, she yelled. He mumbled, I'm sorry. Should have listened, ... You can apologize when we're back, she grunted, dragging him through. The rubble. Behind her, the last Rangers were laying down cover fire. The Blackhawk roared, skids scraping dirt. Donna tossed Simmons onto the floor of the bird, then climbed in after him. The door slammed shut. The chopper lifted. Sand swirled. Gunfire faded behind them. Inside the Blackhawk, it was chaos. Blood, smoke, moans, stretchers, gear. Dana didn't sit. She moved from body to body, checking vitals, adjusting splints. holding pressure. Captain Riker sat against the wall, watching her work. For a moment, no one spoke. Then he said quietly, "We should have had you on the first roster." Dana didn't stop moving. "You do now." The Blackhawk shook violently as it lifted off, engines whining under the strain. Dana gripped the ceiling rail with one bloodied glove while crouched over Private Langley, the kid whose leg had nearly been torn off. He was slipping fast pulse. Weak, lips pale, eyes half closed. The 4-line pulsed slowly, not fast enough. "Stay with me," she shouted over the roar. She tapped his cheek. "Don't you dare give up now." He blinked slowly. "Cold, can't feel." Dana swore, under her breath, and unzipped her second trauma pouch. Blood bag, tubing, field transfusion kit. "Captain, I need a line open," she yelled across the cabin. "Now." Riker didn't hesitate. He grabbed Langley's limp arm, held it tight. Dinah plunged a large bore needle into his vein, rigged the bag, and squeezed it with her fist, pushing blood into the dying private's body. Come on," Langley gasped once, then again. His eyelids fluttered. Donna checked his pulse. Stronger. She let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Riker nodded to her. "You just bought him time." Dana wiped sweat from her brow. "Let's hope the next team's faster than us." The pilot's voice came through the comms. "We're rerouted to FOB Devlin Bagram Base under lockdown. Strap in." Dana barely had time to brace herself when the Blackhawk jerked hard left, dodging another possible threat zone. One of the wounded groaned, clutching his abdomen. She crawled to him, slipping between boots and gear. He had shrapnel embedded in his stomach. She hadn't had time to dig it out at the compound. Now, midder, she had seconds. She unzipped her chest kit, pulled out tweezers and sterile gauze. "You're gonna feel this," she said. The Ranger gritted his teeth. "You got this, Doc." The cabin swayed again as Dana slid the metal sliver out, clamped the bleeding with gauze, then sealed the wound with surgical tape and foam. Blood soaked her sleeves. She didn't care. 10 minutes later, the chopper touched down. Med teams ran forward with stretchers and gurneys. Dana stayed on until every one of her patients had been carried off. Then finally she stepped down and collapsed to her knees. She wasn't injured, just drained. A young nurse ran up. "Ma'am, we've got you." "I'm fine," Dana whispered, waving her off. Get to them first. Inside the field hospital, the chaos continued. Dana followed close, checking on each soldier she treated. Every one of them made it, even Langley. He was stable, breathing. Later that night, Dana sat in the medical tent, scrubbing the blood off her hands. It had dried beneath her fingernails, soaked into the lines of her palms. No matter how many times she washed, it wouldn't all come off. Across the tent, Captain Riker approached, holding 2 metal mugs. "Coffee," he said, "strong." She looked up and gave a weak smile. "I earned this." "You earned a hell of a lot more than that." He sat beside her, eyes heavy. "They didn't believe in you." "I didn't believe in you," he admitted. "But out there, you didn't just patch us up. You fought like one of us. You moved like one of us. Hell, you led like one of us." Dana stared at her hands. "I wasn't trying to prove anything," she said. "I just couldn't let anyone die when I could have stopped it." "That's why we needed you," Riker said softly. The tent fell quiet for a while. Outside, the wind howled against the canvas walls. Inside, Dana poured more coffee and sat in silence. 12 hours earlier. Unknown to Dana, back at HQ, her name was already circling like wildfire. Colonel Harwood stood before a room of commanders, projecting a grainy drone feed on the screen. It showed Dana entering the gas-filled room. then emerging with a hostage, then going back again, and again, 3 times. "Gentlemen," Harwood said. She went in alone. 3 lives saved. 2 more stabilized under active fire. And she held the left perimeter after an RPG strike. One officer leaned forward. "She did all that while under direct contact?" "Yes," Harwood replied. "And without her, 6 of those men wouldn't have made it to extraction. Probably more." A stunned silence followed. "She wasn't even supposed to be on that bird," someone whispered. Harwood crossed his arms. "That was your mistake, not hers." Back in the tent, Dana packed up her gear again. She didn't sleep. Sleep felt distant, irrelevant. Instead, she wrote down notes, field adjustments, gear improvements, triage speed hacks. Every little detail that might help the next medic. She wasn't interested in glory. She was interested in progress. Before sunrise, she walked the recovery tent. One by one, she checked each patient. Langley smiled when he saw her. "Doc." "Don't try to talk," she said. "Save that energy for therapy." "You stayed," he whispered. "I thought medics bailed after handoff." Dana shook her head. "Not this one." From behind, Colonel Harwood's voice cut through the stillness. "Lieutenant Prescott." She turned sharply, saluting. "Sir." "At ease," he said, approaching. They walked outside into the cold morning wind. "Washington's calling," he said. "They saw the footage. Want to fast-track you for commendation." Dana looked away. "I'm not sure I want that." "You don't get to decide who's inspired by you," Harwood said. "But you do get to decide what comes next." She paused. "And what is next?" The colonel handed her a folded letter. Invitation to join the 82nd Airborne as their trauma lead. Field team. Combat zone. No backup. You'll train medics from scratch. Shape the next you. Dana opened it, read the first few lines, then smiled for the first time in days. "Sir," she said, folding the letter neatly. "I think I'm just getting started." 2 months after Kandahar, Dana Prescott stood on the tarmac of Forward Operating Base Titan, the early morning sun painting the steel of incoming helicopters in a sharp gold. She wore new patches, now 82nd Airborne, Combat Trauma Lead, but the bloodstains on her old boots hadn't faded, and she didn't replace them. She liked the reminder. It had only taken 2 missions with her new team for the attitude to shift. No one questioned why she was in the room anymore. No more jokes, no side glances. Instead, young medics gathered. When she spoke, Rangers made space at the planning table. The COs requested her personally. The whispers from Kandahar had spread like wildfire. The footage, once confidential, had been shown in training units across multiple bases. "This is field leadership," a commander had said, pausing on the frame where Dana emerged through the smoke with a limp hostage on her shoulder. She hadn't even known the cameras were rolling. Her inbox overflowed with requests. "Doc, what gear do you carry? How did you handle exposure and gunfire at the same time? How did you stay calm?" She answered every single one, but she didn't stop working. Now, inside a dusty tent outside Mosul, she knelt beside a wounded Iraqi child who had stepped on a buried mine. His foot was mangled. His mother sobbed quietly in the corner. Dana's hands were steady, her voice soft, even as she prepared to amputate below the knee. The translator relayed her words. "He'll survive. He'll walk again with time." The mother clutched Dana's vest, shaking. Dana let her. The scalpel slid clean. She worked with precision and speed, applying the tourniquet, cauterizing the artery. Sweat ran down her spine. 25 minutes later, the child was stabilized, sedated, and ready for medevac. Captain Morrison, her new CO, watched from the yaws. Flap of the tent. "That's the 3rd save this week." Dana didn't look up. That's 3 you still have a future. You never slow down. She finally met his eyes. Neither does war. A week later, Dana's team was assigned to support a critical night op. Intel revealed insurgents were hiding in a school with civilians trapped on the upper floors. The assault would be surgical stealth, speed, and silence. One wrong move could cause civilian casualties. They needed an embedded medic who could keep up. No one even discussed who to send. They all turned to Dana. On briefing night, she entered the room. This time, there was no snickering, no questioning. Every man at the table listened as she reviewed possible injury patterns. Blunt force trauma from collapsed walls, shrapnel, wounds, gas exposure, secondary infections. She outlined triage zones, evacuation priorities, and the 4 critical supplies every ranger would carry on their vest. They nodded, took notes. Not because she was a woman, because she was the Dana. Prescott. That night, she loaded onto the Blackhawk again. Same rotor sounds, same night air, different everything. This time, no one questioned her presence. She jumped out with the team when they landed, moved like she belonged, because she did. Inside the school, chaos unfolded fast. Insurgents opened. Fire from the rooftop. One ranger took a shot to the chest plate, caught it, but the impact shattered ribs. Dana dragged him out, patched the bleeding lung in under 2 minutes, reinflated it with a decompression needle, and secured him to a waiting evac. Upstairs, a young girl had been hit by debris skull trauma. Dana rushed to her, slipped off her gloves, and cradled the child's head. No pulse, someone whispered. She's not gone yet, Dana snapped, starting compressions. The dust was thick, the gunfire louder now. Dana breathed for the girl, pumped her chest, then performed a field cricothyrotomy with a pen casing. The girl twitched, then coughed, and then cried. Everyone in the room froze. Dana simply continued her work. The morning after the op, Captain Morrison walked into her tent with a grim look. "Washington wants you stateside," he said. Dana stopped packing her gauze rolls. "Why?" "War College keynote. They want you to speak. Medal presentation. A documentary's already in production. Your story's gone viral. You're a symbol now." Dana stared at him, then turned back to her supplies. "I didn't sign up to be a symbol," she said. "I signed up to stop people from dying." "I know," Morrison replied, softer now. "But sometimes people need to see what that looks like." She sighed. "How long?" 3 days in D.C., that's it. Then you're back." She hesitated, then nodded. "I'll go. But I'm not changing boots." In D.C., everything felt too polished. The Capitol Rotunda smelled of wax and leather. Reporters swarmed. She wore her dress uniform under a sea of medals and polished shoes, or refused makeup or PR prep. At the ceremony, the Secretary of Defense handed her the Silver Star. He began a speech, reading off her accomplishments. Dana didn't hear most of it. What mattered were the faces in the front row. Langley, now walking with a cane, alive. Dempsey, smiling with his wife. The child, from Mosul, flown in secretly for the event, waving shyly from the crowd. When it was her turn to speak, Dana walked to the podium. "I don't have much to say," she began. "I didn't save lives for glory. I did it because I could, because someone had to. I've seen what happens when no one steps forward. I won't let that happen on my watch." She paused. "And if you think I'm special, you're wrong. There are hundreds like me out there working in silence. Put them on the Blackhawk and watch what they do." Then she stepped down. 3 days in Washington felt like 3 years. Dana Prescott was paraded from studio to studio, talk show to talk show. News anchors praised her. Senators shook her hand. Even the president made a passing comment about the courage of women. In uniform, every camera seemed to want her face. Every microphone wanted her thoughts. But none of them wanted to hear about the nightmares. They didn't want to hear about the screaming in her sleep, the child who bled out in her arms in Mosul, or the sound a soldier makes when he realizes he'll never walk again. They wanted headlines, not truth. She played the part just enough. She smiled, nodded, answered what she had to. But her eyes never softened. And the second her plane touched back down at the forward base, she was already unpacking her gear. Her boots hit dirt. She breathed dust again. Finally, this was her place. Not marble floors or velvet chairs. Here with her medics. Her team, her scars. Back at base, things had changed. They'd renamed the training wing Prescott Field School. Unofficially at first. A joke. But the name stuck. New recruits whispered. When she passed, Rangers asked for her to evaluate their kits. She was writing new doctrine, updating combat medic SOPs across multiple units. She even designed a field trauma rig lightweight modular, able to be worn like a vest. They called it the Doc Rack. Still, she avoided the spotlight. She didn't go back to the war college. She turned down interviews. Instead, she trained. She ran drills with her team at 0400, made them carry stretchers across 5 clicks in gear. She screamed over their shoulders when they hesitated. She made them simulate triage under fire loudspeakers blaring gunfire, flashbangs going off. During intubation drills, her team hated her at first. Then they adored her, because they started saving more lives. And they knew why. Then came Operation Red Knife. Intel reported a hidden insurgent tunnel system buried under a mountain pass near Helmand. A joint task force was sent in airborne, Navy SEALs, Afghan commandos. Dana was assigned to lead a 4-medic emergency response team. They were to wait 1 click from the front line and enter if there were casualties. It was supposed to be a surgical hit, but war doesn't follow blueprints. 2 hours in, the call came through. Mass casualty. Collapse in Tunnel 3. 5 trapped. 1 code red. Dana was already moving. She grabbed her rig, barked orders to her team, and sprinted up the ravine. Dust clouded the air. The mountainside had crumbled rock and debris, burying half the tunnel. As she arrived, a SEAL named Wexler limped out, coughing blood. Explosives set off a chain collapse, he rasped. We need oxygen. And fast. Dana handed him her personal mask. Where's your team? In there. She didn't hesitate. She ducked into the dark. The air inside the tunnel was thick with dust and smoke. Her headlamp cut through the haze, just enough to show broken stone, twisted rebar, and pools of blood. She crawled over a fallen beam and found the first injured Private McCowan, barely breathing, 1 arm crushed. Her medics followed her inside, handing tools silently. Dana injected painkillers, started a drip, and used a bone clamp to stabilize the crushed arm. You'll live, she whispered, but you'll hate rehab. He smiled barely. Further in, they found Sergeant Youssef pinned by a rock the size of a small fridge. He was conscious. I can't feel my legs, he said. We're not here for your legs, Dana answered. We're here for your life. Her team used a jack to shift the rock, while Dana packed gauze around the bleeding. Once free, Youssef passed out. They carried him, but there were still 2 more deeper in. Dana kept crawling. The air thinned, time warped. She reached the end SEALs, Reyes and Booker. Booker was already gone, neck snapped. Reyes sat with him, eyes blank. He wouldn't leave me, Reyes said, voice hollow. Dana knelt beside him. I'm not leaving you either, she said. Reyes broke down. She held him until he stopped shaking. Then she moved. 3 hours later, Everyone was out. 4 lives saved. 1 lost. Dana sat on a rock, covered in ash, blood streaked across her face. Her medics lay nearby, exhausted. Colonel Harwood flew in on the second bird. He walked up to her silently, crouched. "That was impossible," he said. Dana didn't answer. "I'm putting you in for the Distinguished Service Cross." She didn't respond. "Say something." Dana finally looked up. "Tell them to bury Booker with honors. And bring his mom here to see where he died." Harwood stared at her, then nodded. Done. Back at base that night, Dana showered in silence. Then sat alone in the mess tent, sipping cold coffee. Sergeant Dempsey slid in beside her. "You ever stop?" Dana stared into the mug. "When I do, they die." He nodded, quiet. "We talk about heroes too much," she finally said. "People think it's a title. It's not. It's a cost." Dempsey frowned. "You ever wish you'd chosen a different life?" Dana looked up. "No," she said. "I wish the world didn't need people like me, but it does. So I'm here." That night, she slept beside her boots, ready, because somewhere out there, another call would come. Another Blackhawk would spin up, and when it did, they'd call for her. Months had passed since Operation Red Knife. Dana Prescott's reputation was no longer whispered. It was loudly celebrated across the military. Her name was on walls, on patches, in policy documents, but she never let it get to her head. She still woke up at dawn, laced her boots tight, and trained harder than anyone else. Today was different, though. Today was graduation. The newest class of combat medics at Prescott Field School were about to receive their badges. Young faces bright with hope, nervousness, and pride. Dana stood at the podium, a sea of crisp uniforms before her. The weight of the moment settled on her like the heavy gear she always carried. "Today," she began, voice steady, "you join a legacy built in mud, blood, and fire. You're not just medics, you're lifelines. When the bullets fly and the dust won't settle, it's your hands that make the difference between life and death." She scanned the crowd, eyes catching the bright stare of a young woman in the front row. "You will be tested. You will face moments where giving up feels easier than pushing forward. But remember this, your strength is not just in your training. It's in your heart. In the silent vow to never leave a comrade behind." A soft murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Dana continued, "I know what it feels like to be underestimated, to be laughed at, to be told you don't belong. I know the weight of every life lost on my watch. But I also know the power of persistence." She took a breath. "The colonel once told me, 'Get her on the Blackhawk.' That order changed everything. It gave me a chance to prove what I was made of. Now I'm handing that chance to you." After the ceremony, the young medics surrounded her. Questions came fast about gear, tactics, even her scars. One asked, "Did you ever want to quit?" Dana smiled. "Every day. But then I remembered who I was fighting for." Another said, "How do you keep going after everything?" She looked at them, serious now. "You don't. Not alone. You lean on your team. You find strength in each other." A soft voice from the back caught her attention. "Are you really like us?" asked a young recruit, barely more than a girl. Dana knelt down. "I'm just like you, but I've been in the dirt longer. And I've learned that being the best means never stopping, even when it hurts." Months later, the Blackhawk flew again. This time, Dana was not the newest face on the bird. She was the lead medic, the one everyone looked to, the one who now ordered others to get on the Blackhawk. The mission was to extract wounded after a fierce firefight. Dana moved like a shadow through the chaos, calm, precise, decisive. She patched up a soldier with a collapsed lung, steadied a child with a broken arm, and reassured a terrified Afghan mother cradling her baby. Her voice was steady over the roar of rotors and gunfire. Her hands moved faster than time. As the chopper lifted, Dana glanced at the horizon sunlight breaking through storm clouds. She thought of the briefings where they laughed at her, of the colonel's order that changed everything, of every life she'd saved, every sacrifice made. Her eyes filled with quiet pride, not for herself, but for the countless medics who would follow, for the families who would hold their loved ones a little longer, for the promise she'd made to never leave anyone behind. The Blackhawk soared, higher, slicing through the sky. And Dana Prescott, the girl they once doubted, was flying with it unbreakable, unshaken, unstoppable. The end